Good evening, friends. You are most welcome to Civil Affairs channel. Today we are going to discuss social anthropology by Maan IGNOU, mane004, Gender and Society, and our topic is women, work, and globalization. So, as we have seen in the last section, closely linked to the feminization of poverty is the changing nature of women's work. Studies in this field have been dominated by growing phenomena of women's participation in non-agricultural employment. In this section, we will study the issue of feminization of the work in context of export-oriented manufacturing in developing countries, changes in occupational structure, and in the overall organization of an individual country's economy are directly determined by the part of country's economy plays in the international arena. The level of industrialization of a country is one of the major determinants of women's participation in non agricultural employment. Industrialization alters patterns of work, it changes the relationship between the workplace and the home, and it recognizes the distribution of employment opportunities within the different sectors of economy by creating new forms of employment and destroying others. Moore 1988. The rapid increase in the number of women engaged in non agricultural employment in developing countries has not occurred uniformly in all regions. Also, the increase has not taken place in the same sector of employment. While some women have gone into the industrial labor force, most have gone into light industrial manufacturing. In some countries, a significant proportion of women have gone into the tertiary sector of employment, where they are employed in personal services and government occupations as well as in professions. Let us discuss the case of light industrial manufacturing in detail. World market factories or export processing zones. Global capitalist development has led to the emergence of world market factories in many parts of the developing world, particularly in Asia and Latin America. These world market factories produce goods exclusively for export to the rich developed countries of the world. The companies that run these factories may be owned by local capitalists or they may be subsidiaries of large multinationals. In either case, their choice of location is determined by cheap and compliant labor, the advantages of tax concessions, and by conveniently inadequate regulations governing health and safety provisions. World Market Factories produces textiles, soft toys, sports equipments, and ready-to-wear clothes, electric goods, and components for the electronics industries. In many instances, these factories play a very limited role in the manufacturing of the product, which means that they are little more than a stage in a production process controlled by multinationals. Moore 1988. Safety provisions. Many developing countries have demarcated export processing zones (EPZ) for such activity. The idea of EPZ is essentially to provide special incentives to exporters and to allow them to avoid or bypass many of the laws and physical and material constraints which supposedly inhibit export growth in the rest of the economy. The significance of the export processing zones lies essentially in the physical, social, and economic separation from the rest of the country. Ghosh 2002. Education is thought to have a positive effect on women's participation in the labor force because it improves employment opportunities for women. It encourages greater female mobility in search of employment. It is assumed to increase the aspirations and expectations of women workers, and it is supposed to weaken the barriers of cultural tradition which prevent women from entering the labor market. Moore 1988. The most interesting aspect of these world markets factories is that the vast majority, over 80% of the workers who are employed in them, are young women between the ages of 13 and 25 years. These women, of course, are the assembly line operatives. The administrative and technical posts, which are far fewer in number, are occupied by men. A number of studies report that the preference for employing women by these companies is due to women's apparently innate capacities for the work, their docility, their disinclination to unionize, and the fact that women are cheap because while men need an income to support a family, women do not. This shows that the gender biases inherent in social life are strategically used in employment of women for the production of cheaper goods. Impact of wage labors on women's lives. Many researchers have studied the impacts of such employment on the lives of women. It is interesting to note that these studies do not uniformly talk of the disadvantages and exploitation of women in such forms of employment. Many studies point to the benefits that some women in developing countries have gained from these employment opportunities. For example, Swans 1995, Sen 1996, Joex 1997. Studies on Caribbean region show that paid work is desirable because it provides women greater independence from men and their families. Among older married women in Puerto Rico, it was found that long-term employment in industrial production leads to a greater sense of self-worth and greater class consciousness. Safa 1990. In addition, several studies of Latin American countries contended that when women enter the labor force, more equitable patterns of resources sharing and decision making within the household unit occur. Mayer 2006. Ganguly Sarkis 2003 also states that globalizing processes of market liberalization and SAPs may not necessarily have a negative impact on women. While new forms of inequality do result from economic reforms, there may be other opportunities for greater independence in certain societies, like the lower middle class women in West Bengal, India. Other researchers like Omveth 1997 in Ganguly Scars 2003 have stated that in light of democratization in gender relations within the Indian family, the effects of structural adjustment on women have not been as much of a burden as its opponents claim. Feldman's study 1992 in IBID of women workers in export processing enclaves in Bangladesh shows that women from rural middle strata families were able to increase their employment opportunities, thus challenging the traditional prohibitions on female mobility that were shaped by Bengali culture and a variant of Islam doctrine. Salaf 1981 in her study of working women of Hong Kong shows that in low wages economy of Hong Kong, each family depends on the wages of several family members in order to survive, and daughters' wages are increasingly crucial part of family income. While there are several advantages of the working daughter to the family, these women also see their employment as beneficial as it opens up a number of opportunities for them. Most marriages are no longer arranged, and women tend to meet their potential spouses through peer group activities. Women save part of their earnings to buy household goods for their marital homes and to make contributions to their dowries. Working daughters keep a small and regular amount for themselves from their earnings to use for personal effects and leisure activities. In this sense, wage labor make leisure time activities with peers financially possible. In recognition of the money they put into the family, working daughters are usually exempt from household tasks such as cooking, childcare, and laundry. Working daughters are also given more say in family affairs, particularly in relation to the activities of younger siblings, Moore 1988. Apart from improving women's position within home and providing greater independence, there are some other positive outcomes of women's employment. Research indicates that women's access to economic resources in the form of paid employment reduces their dependence on children for social status and economic security, thereby reducing levels of fertility. Relatedly, paid work has been found to positively influence women's own health as well as that of their children, Mere 2006. However, there are several scholars who adhere to the female marginalization hypothesis. These researchers contend that the studies discussed above are overly optimistic in regard to women's gain from employment in today's world. While information and communication technology has become a potent force for transforming social, economic, and political life in the globalized world, the gender division of labor is already merging. A large number of women tend to be concentrated in the end user, lower skill jobs and comprise a very small number among managerial, maintenance, and design personnel. Pandey 2006. According to PAPS 1992, development has led to the displacement of women from traditional subsistence activities and restricted employment opportunities. Moreover, in many cultures, deeply held social traditions such as housework as women's duty have not changed as a result of women becoming breadwinners in the household. For those women who have found employment in the modern sector, they often face continuing gender exploitation in the form of hazardous working conditions, marginalization into low paying jobs, barriers to promotion, and unequal pay. Mere 2006. This is also reflected in the examples that we discussed in the section on female headed households. Both these kinds of studies illustrate the multifaceted process of economic globalization. While women may experience increased independence and power within the household when they enter the labor force, the conditions under which they gain employment and how they participate in economy are crucial determinants of whether or not they improve their economic and social status.